So I had a lot of fun making that video about New Nightmare and Dream Warriors. So I thought I would turn to a similar franchise, that franchise being Friday the 13th. Now Jason Voorhees, he's the ultimate kind of badass slasher in my opinion. He's big, tall, strong, silently lurks in the woods. He doesn't say a word, but he doesn't have to. Well, that is unless you count that little chant he does. I've seen all the Friday the 13th movies, and similar to the Nightmare franchise, these movies can range from pretty awesome to pretty damn bad. But once again, I find myself coming back to two movies specifically in the series. And these are Part 4, The Final Chapter, and Part 6, Jason Lives. But here might be the hot take. I find both of these sequels, Part 4 and Part 6, better than the original F13. So we're going to take the same criteria from the Nightmare on Elm Street video and break things down into 4 categories. Those 4 categories being costume, characters, plot, and kills. So let's pack up our gear and head over to Camp Crystal Lake to see Jason Voorhees in action. First category, the costume. Alright, so for the final chapter outfit, this is what I think of when I think of classic Jason Voorhees. I mean, he's got the mask with like the 3 straps on it, that classic red chevron, and he's got the jeans, the long buttoned up shirt. And this is also the mask, when I think of it, I think of the video game for the Nintendo Entertainment System back in the 80s. It's not the cover art, but it's like the splash screen when the game starts. It's like the same as this movie, and it's got like that little mark in it too, same color mask. So it's just a cool outfit all around, and I really like it, so it gets a full point for me. Now on to Jason Lives. Now this costume, if you think about it, is pretty similar to the final chapter, but this time Jason's rocking some, badass gloves, and it looked like he went into a Home Depot, went to the hardware department, got those generic, thick tan gloves, paid $5 to $10, walked out of there, and got to some killing. Now, I do think Jason looks pretty badass in this movie. For instance, I really like how his skin looks like it's super deteriorated. He's basically like a big, hulking, walking zombie in this one. He also has the classic mask back. I feel like it's more polished and clean than before, but it's still looking good. And also, it comes with a killer tune this time from Alice Cooper. He's the man behind the mask. And yeah, I pretty much give this one a full point. It's also a great costume. Second category, the characters. Oh man, does the final chapter have some good characters or what? I think we got to start off with the obvious here. Tommy Jarvis, played by Corey Feldman. Now, I think Tommy Jarvis is one of the most important characters to the Friday the 13th franchise. His character spans over 3 movies. So this one, The Final Chapter, A New Beginning, and Jason Lives. And he's also in the 2017 video game depicted from Jason Lives, which is pretty damn good. And in my opinion, he's kind of like the Nancy Thompson of this series. So you have Tommy Jarvis, and then you have his older sister, Trish, who does a pretty good job. She shows protection and concern for Tommy the whole movie, and she also stands up to Jason in her own way. And then you have the new group of, college kids or whatever that are moving next door, and Trish is trying to make friends with them. And I think all of them are written well and unique in their own way. And out of that group, you have Crispin Glover, who plays Jimmy. And I feel like Jimmy kind of resembles the George McFly character from Back to the Future, which came out a year after this in 1985. And boy, does Jimmy have some killer dance moves. And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, Jason is pretty badass in this entry. And he also shows some character when he's pretty vulnerable at the end, with that face off with Corey Feldman. So this one gets a full point for me. Okay, so for Jason Lives, let's start off with Tommy Jarvis as well. This time he's played by actor Thom Mathews, who does a great job in my opinion. And I go back and forth all the time. Do I like the character of Tommy Jarvis better in the final chapter played by Feldman, or do I like him better in Jason Lives played by Mathews? I mean, they're both good in their own way, but I like how in Jason Lives you get to see, Jarvis go up against Jason a lot more. He's facing off against things. You see him in a lot more trouble from start to finish, and he's kind of like the set focus of the film. So I do like that. And then you have Megan, who plays the sheriff's daughter, and she's also great. I really like how she, slowly rebels against her father. She gets interested in Tommy, and she kind of gets him to skirt around the police, and they kind of join forces together, and then they end up, taking on Jason at the end. So she's a good character. And I do like the sheriff character overall. You could tell he wants what's good for his town. He doesn't want like Jason's name mentioned too much because it might create panic and hysteria. But given that, he's pretty much an asshole towards Tommy.
Look, you've got me where you want me. There's no reason...
If I had you where I wanted you, they'd be pumping your ass full of formaldehyde.
But despite that, I think he's overall a good guy. Like, you could see how he goes back to the town. He tries to help the kids. When Jason is trying to go back to Megan and Tommy at one point, he physically stops Jason and he's fighting him hand to hand. So I think Sheriff Garris is pretty good overall, and I like him. He's good. And then you have the man himself, Jason Voorhees. He's just as badass in my opinion compared to the final chapter, in terms of his strength, his kills, his velocity. But he's also pretty vulnerable too. If you remember in the cabin scene, he encounters a little girl and he just stares at her and kind of like tilts his head. So I found that interesting. So yeah, characters here, full point. Third category, the plot. So we're all tied up so far. Let's see if that changes. So the plot in the final chapter, really solid. You get this nice family moving into Camp Crystal Lake. Mother, daughter, little brother, nice golden retriever. Everything's going well until we get to the morgue. And then we have Jason rising, and he literally stabs and twists his way out of the morgue and makes his way back to his home away from home, Camp Crystal Lake. So I really liked how the characters are having like so much fun in the meantime as Jason makes his way over. We got people skinny dipping in the lake.
Hey, Trish! Come on in!
No, thanks. I think I'm overdressed.
Hey, Trish!
Bye-bye.
Partying at the house. Trish and Tommy are having fun together. Their car ends up breaking down, and this random hiker from the woods shows up to help them fix their car. This sounds bad at first, but then this random guy actually ends up being cool, and Tommy gets along with him really well, and there's some good character development between the two. And then when Jason finally shows up at the camp, he just goes full bore, just killing everybody in a brutal fashion, pedal to the metal, until he meets his match, Tommy Jarvis. And this scene is so cool. You have Corey Feldman shaving his head, putting the makeup on, basically looking like young boy Jason, who drowned many years ago at Camp Crystal Lake. And this basically stun locks Jason. He's kind of stunned, looking at Tommy in place. And it's such a good scene, so pivotal to the series. Quite possibly one of the best scenes of the whole franchise. And then you have Jason turning around and Trish knocks his mask off, and you see that grotesque, gross face of Jason. It's such an iconic scene. And then he turns back around and Corey Feldman just hits him with the machete, and the way Jason's face slides down the machete when it hits the ground, and then Tommy goes full bore and psycho and just starts slashing Jason over and over. Trish's VO is like, Tommy! It's such a good scene, great ending. The plot gets 1 point for the final chapter. So for Jason Lives, I really like the opening of this movie. You know, we have Tommy with his friend going back to the graveyard where Jason is buried. It's dark, it's raining, it's so like gritty in nature. Everything is like, it's kind of hard to see, and the way everything's portrayed, it's like a classic monster movie basically. So yeah, we have Tommy digging up the grave, and then he opens the casket, and then we see Jason Voorhees, who's totally emaciated. Like, he's basically a skeleton corpse, broken down, super gross looking. But Tommy kindles back to that, you know, part 4 final chapter, and he starts going mad, just like taking a spear from the fence of the graveyard and like jabbing it into Jason's torso over and over and over, and basically sticking it one last time in there. And then he gets out of the grave, and it's raining, right? Pretty heavily. And then finally we see lightning striking twice into the rod. And just like a classic monster movie like Frankenstein, this brings Jason back to life. I love this opening. It's super good. So yeah, that opening, completely badass and awesome. Loved it. But then we get to the camp counselors, and unfortunately, I think they're pretty forgettable. Other than Megan, the sheriff's daughter, I think she's great. But the other camp counselors, I just feel like there's not much to them. They're not written that well. And they're just overall pretty much forgettable. But I think that's okay, because the story between the sheriff, Tommy, Megan, and Jason makes up for it. You know, we have the constant power struggle between the sheriff and Tommy. And then we have Megan hitching up with Tommy, trying to get him out of Dodge to take care of Jason. The sheriff going back to the town to take care of the kids and also fighting Jason. So that's really good. And then we have the final battle between Tommy and Jason, which is really awesome. Like, I like how Tommy's in the middle of the lake in the boat. He's got that big rock with the big chain tied to it. He's luring Jason like, come on, come on. And you have Jason slowly walking into the lake to fight Tommy. It was a good fight, good battle between them. You know, Tommy finally gets the chain around Jason's neck, drops the rock, but then Jason grabs Tommy and pulls him in, and Megan has to come for the save. Then Jason finally drowns. It's a good scene, good ending. You know, for Jason Lives, I also have to give the plot a full point. Fourth and final category, the kills. Alright, so for the kills, Jason doesn't mess around at all in the final chapter. We have to start at the morgue, where he slits that guy's throat, he twists his head, and then he goes up to the nurse, stabs her in the chest, proceeds to cut her open. Brutal. Another notable kill for me is Samantha. You know, she's outside, she's trying to blow off some steam. She saw her boyfriend at the party flirting with some chick, so she's pissed off. So she decides to go for a nice swim, right? She goes for a nice swim, gets on the life raft, you know, that floaty to relax. Then out of nowhere, Jason pops up, holds her in place, and stabs her right through the body. I thought that was pretty brutal too. And then we have Crispin Glover. So Crispin Glover just got lucky with this chick upstairs. So he makes his way down to the kitchen. He wants to have a nice drink to celebrate. Problem is, he can't find a corkscrew. So he yells out, "Where's the goddamn corkscrew?"
What the hell's a corkscrew?
Jason knows. He slams it into Crispin Glover's hand and twists. And then he like basically smacks him in the face with a butcher knife. Great kill. Classic moment. And then we have a kill in which I consider to be both hilarious and noble. And that's Rob, the hiker from the woods. So we have Rob and Trish together in the house. They're trying to get away from Jason. But then Rob leaves his knife in the basement, and he's got to go back for it. So as he does, Jason pops up, pins Rob to the wall, and starts slashing at him brutally. And as this is happening, Rob is yelling out, "He's killing me! He's killing me! Trish, run!" And it's so kind of awkward but funny, and also in a way noble. And that is also a great kill. It's such a unique, awesome kill. So yeah, for all those great kills, the final chapter gets a full point. So here's the thing about Jason Lives when it comes to the kills. A lot of the time, the camera cuts away when the actual kill happens. Now, I don't know why that is. It's still rated R, but maybe the MPAA was more strict during this point. I'm not really sure, but I just found that interesting that the camera cuts away for a lot of the kills. Despite that, you still get some really good kills in this movie. You get the kill at the start that has Tony Goldwyn, and he's most notably from the movie Ghost. So him and his girlfriend are in their car, they're traveling on this road, and then Jason's standing in the way. So Tony decides to go outside and confront Jason, and he has like this little pea shooter in his hand, and he's threatening Jason with it. So Jason takes like this big spear, like from the graveyard that he had earlier, and he sticks it into Tony, and he like hoists him over his shoulder into the air. And that's a really good kill. I enjoyed it. So right after that, Jason goes after the girlfriend, who falls to her back on the floor. And then she loses sight of Jason for a second. But then he pops up out of nowhere over her head with like the spear and like sticks it right into her head. And we get like a POV from the girl's eyes as the spear's coming down, which was pretty cool. I thought it was pretty corny for like the American Express card to be floating in the puddle beside her. Kind of like a cheesy ad, but other than that, it was a good kill. And then we have the kills in the RV, which I found pretty entertaining. So we have Corey and Nikki. They're having all sorts of fun in the RV. And then after that, Corey ends up driving, but he's driving like a maniac. So Nikki keeps falling to the back of the RV. And as she's walking up to the front of the RV, Jason grabs her out of nowhere, pulling her into the bathroom. And they're making all sorts of noise in that bathroom. And Corey just thinks Nikki's having fun by herself until Jason takes Nikki's face and he smashes it against the wall and it slowly forms a face from the outside. I thought that was such a cool effect. And it also shows the sheer strength of Jason too. And then after that, Corey gets a knife right into the side of the head from Jason for his lack of awareness. And I gotta mention the sheriff kill because this one is truly awesome. So near the end of the movie, the sheriff is absolutely beating the shit out of Jason. He's pummeling him on the ground. He's got this big rock that he's smashing into Jason's face. But then all of a sudden, Jason grabs the sheriff by the throat, pushes him back, snaps his back, and folds him up like a goddamn accordion. What a way to go. So while this movie does have a lot of cutaways when it comes to the kills, I still find the kills very creative and awesome. So it gets a full point for me. So there we have it, a complete stalemate. Both movies score 4 for 4, perfect points. They win in each category together as well. And it doesn't surprise me. I always watch these movies back to back, sometimes throwing a new beginning in there, the middle movie, but not nearly as much. It's always the final chapter and then Jason Lives. I find them to be great movies. So despite the score, I don't think they're perfect movies, but they're great horror movies, and I suggest any horror fan to watch them. Yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed this sequel battle between the final chapter and Jason Lives. If you did, please click the like button. I'd appreciate it. And please comment down below which F13 sequels are your favorite, or how would you score this battle. Anyways, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. I will catch you on the next one. Peace.